And again, the title of today's lecture is The Indo-Europeans. All right, well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but did you know that English is an Indo-European-based language? I wonder what that even means. Did you know that we speak a language with the same roots as Hindi, spoken in India, and Farsi, spoken in Iran, as well as Spanish and German? I mean, we have a lot in common as English speakers with these other languages, far more in common than you may have thought before or previously. So the origins of these languages, they have Indo-European roots. And for instance, if you think of Indo-European, what that sounds like, Indo kind of should remind you of India, and European, obviously, of Europe. So yeah, these languages are far more similar than you think. So who were these Indo-Europeans? Well, first of all, they included two main groups of people, the Hittites, who later established an empire around 2000 BC and settled in what we call Anatolia, or Asia Minor, or modern-day Turkey, as well as a group of people called the Aryan people, who were going to eventually settle in what we now call India and Pakistan. Okay, so really what you need to write down as a definition for the Indo-Europeans, hey, this was a group of people who included the Hittites and Aryans. They settled in what we now call Turkey and the northern Fertile Crescent, and then they established civilizations in India as well. So we're going to focus on the Hittites in this chapter, as well as the Aryans, but you should know that other groups of Indo-Europeans, other tribes, are going to settle all over Europe and in different parts of Asia. And obviously a lot of the languages spoken in these other places reflect these different tribes of Indo-Europeans and where they settled. Okay, so these Indo-European warriors, they were all warriors, they're going to migrate across portions of the Middle East, South and Central Asia, and Europe. And this is really going to result in mass cultural diffusion, that spread of goods, ideas from one place to another. And perhaps the best example of this is the fact that today, half of the people living on Earth, they speak languages that have their origins from the Indo-Europeans. So, you know, we have far more similarities with these people than you can ever imagine. Let's talk first of all about the origins in general of the Indo-Europeans. You know, we believe that the Indo-Europeans migrated for unknown reasons, maybe because of climate change or food sources being depleted, maybe their herds were moving. We believe that they migrated from the Caucasus Mountains. Okay, so these people, they were nomadic. They were nomads by nature, and they migrated, we think, from dry grasslands that we call steppes that were located near the Caucasus Mountains, which are located really in between the Black and Caspian Seas. And you know, we have reason to believe that they were already able to domesticate animals, because a lot of the artifacts that we've uncovered suggest that they herded cattle, sheep, and goats. And we also know that they were using horses to as a basis for transportation and to pull their chariots. Most importantly to us, however, is this whole language factor. You know, and as I've said before, half of languages spoken today are of Indo-European origin. Indo-European languages include English, Spanish, Persian, and Hindi. I mean, all these come from Indo-European people. Hindi today is spoken in India, and it's based on an ancient language called Sanskrit. Farsi is a language spoken in Iran, and it's based on Persian. You know, we can tell which Indo-European tribes settled where or in given places based on the languages that are spoken today. So for instance, if you go to Eastern Europe today, they speak Slavic-based languages, such as Russian or Serbo-Croatian, and there are a lot of similarities between these languages. If you go to Western Europe, you will find Celtic languages, Germanic languages, Italic languages. All of those will be found in Western Europe and will form the basis for, you know, modern-day Latin, will form the basis for English and German. And those all will be in Western Europe. So all those have their origins in Indo-European languages. Greek, Persian, and Aryan languages, you're going to see those in the south of Europe, and as well as in the south of what became known as the Hittite Empire and the Aryan empires. You know, there are a lot of similarities between all of the languages today. If you look, for instance, on page 61 of your textbook, they give you a chart and they show you some of the similarities between different words. You know, a word as simple as mother in English, we say madre in Spanish, or mutter in German. Forgive my pronunciation, by the way. But you also have very similar words in Persian and in Sanskrit languages as well, and they're very similar sounding. I know in class I think I told all of you about how in many places the word chai is used for tea. You know, they say this whether you live in Russia or Serbia or whether you live in Turkey. You know, this word is used throughout the region, and a lot of that has to do with the spread of languages and those Indo-European languages. All right, so if you take a look now on, the map on page 62 of your textbook, you know, it shows us where different Indo-European tribes are going to spread and where they're going to take their languages with them. And the migrations of the Indo-Europeans is actually going to continue or take place from about 1700 BC to about 1200 BC. So yeah, it was a long time ago, but we're going to see two major groups of people emerge from these Indo-European tribes. The first group of people I'd like to talk about are the Hittites. Okay, the Hittites lived in what we call Asia Minor, or also known as Anatolia, which was really modern-day Turkey, located along Asia Minor, or Anatolia. You're going to see the Hittites establish a capital at a city called Hattusis. They're going to take over much of Asia Minor, or Anatolia, and much of the Fertile Crescent. In fact, they're going to conquer the Babylonians. So really their whole empire stretched into what we called Mesopotamia and Babylon. The Hittites are going to use an Indo-European language that the Babylonians had actually used. They're going to borrow from other people. Great example of cultural diffusion. They're going to use a language called Akkadian. And this was a very similar language to the Babylonians. And if you're wondering who those Babylonians were, think Hammurabi, you know, the king of Babylon. Hammurabi's Code. This should ring a bell. All right, the Hittites, what else do we know about them? We believe that they were warriors because of a lot of the artifacts that were left behind. We think that they liked to fight. We think that they helped to establish something called the Iron Age because they realized that iron, by forging different metals together, they could create iron and create a much stronger metal for their weapons. So they used iron and helped usher in the Iron Age. They used iron tools. They used iron in their chariots. And iron was much stronger than bronze, and so they were able to establish or create more advanced tools with this metal. The Hittite Empire is going to end around 1190 BC, after about 450 years of reign that they enjoyed. We don't know why exactly they came to an end. Perhaps they were invaded, but they did come to an end after about 450 years in 1190 BC. All right, the next group of people were the Aryans, and they lived starting in around 1500 BC. The Aryans you learned about in 9th grade as this group of warriors who eventually settled in the Indus River Valley of India, or modern-day Pakistan. And we know that they helped to establish kingdoms in the former areas of civilizations that you learned about as 9th graders, like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, along the Indus rivers. If you look on the map on page 62, once again, you can see where this group of people spread. All right, well, just to give you a little more information about the Aryans, the modern Indians are going to borrow quite a bit from the Aryans, including their sacred writings. Their sacred writings were these religious texts that were called the Vedas. They included prayers and instructions for various ritual practices. And it includes a really famous Veda known as the Rig Veda. And this contains thousands of hymns to various gods. Based on these Vedas, or these readings, we can assume that these people were polytheistic, meaning they worshipped many gods. What else do we know about the Aryans? The Aryans had a very complex social system that was in place, and based on the Vedas, we have learned a little bit about these people. We know that the Vedas, this complex social system, eventually is going to form the basis of the Indian caste system. The Aryans had a very complex social system, and they had three main social classes. the Brahmins, the warriors, and then peasants and traders. These different social classes, again, are going to result in the Indian caste system, and these castes are going to help to determine the trades that people have, the roles that people had in society, and it gives us an idea that these people had some sort of complex social organization. Very important when you're looking at an early culture. All right, well, the Aryans are going to spread out throughout Central and South Asia, and one thing they're really well known for, and that shows how they spread, there's an epic story called the Mahabharata, and it's going to emerge from, it was given to us from the Aryans, and it's a very famous story that shows how the Aryans moved south into what we now call India, or the South Asian subcontinent, and all of the struggles that they faced as they migrated. Works like this are very important in history because they give us hints as to the history not only of the Aryan people, but they give us a really great idea about their culture and how they lived. So, many of the beliefs of the Aryans, it's going to result in other religions over time, and these stories like the Mahabharata, they help give us hints as to how religions like Hinduism and Buddhism, how they emerged and when they emerged. Okay, that's lecture 3.1. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for listening. Bye.